Today we're going to be talking about a contract for deed versus a lease option. These two real estate elements are really powerful for investors. But which one is better and which one is used for which strategy? By the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of the differences between contract for deed versus lease options, and the benefits and drawbacks of each, and how to decide which strategy best fits your investment goals. Nothing can be more challenging than determining which strategy is best to fit your overall strategic real estate investment goals. Contracts for deeds, also called land contracts, and lease options are great strategies, but how do they fit into different real estate strategies? I'm going to answer those questions by first explaining what a contract for deed and a lease option are. Next, I'm going to cover which strategies go best for each of those. And finally, let you know how a strategy I developed came from utilizing contracts for deeds that morphed into lease options and has been a game changer for me. If you're ready, let's go. A contract for deed is a legal agreement for a seller purchase property that does not include any banks or traditional financing. Instead, the buyer and seller negotiate between each other, and the buyer makes periodic payments to the seller. And they make those payments until the property is paid in full. A contract for deed is also called a land contract or a bond for title. So what is the angle on utilizing a contract for deed if you are a buyer? Typically, if you are a buyer and you're utilizing a contract for deed, typically you're not able to get traditional financing. So you're looking at alternative ways to be able to purchase a home, and a contract for deed is a great option. But those people whose credits might have been damaged in the past because of a short sale or a foreclosure, like I said, that aren't able to get traditional financing, there are other options out there, and a lot of people look for a contract to deed to fill that void. Now, a lease option is a longer term lease with an option to buy the home at a certain price at a certain date in the future. Similar to a stock option, where it gives you the right to buy a certain stock at a certain price at a certain date in the future. With the lease option, you have the following components. Number one, you have the option or option price. This is money that is paid up front from the buyer to the seller that gives the buyer the right to buy that piece of property at that certain price at a certain date down the road. And that is typically anywhere between 2 to 7% of the purchase price. So if you're looking at a $300,000 home and you want the right to buy that home 2 years down the road at that price, 2% of $300,000 is $6,000, 7% of $300,000 is $21,000, so it could be anywhere in between those two numbers. You obviously have the lease. That's basically the rental agreement. And it outlines the rental price every single month and the responsibilities between the landlord and the tenant. Also, something very interesting in a lease option, typically when they negotiate the price, the lease price every single month that the tenant is paying to the landlord, they negotiate a certain percentage of that will be counted towards the down payment on the home. Because remember, the buyer's goal is to buy this home. They have an option to buy at a certain date down the road. So let's say you're paying $2,000 a month and you negotiate $200 a month that's going to be utilized towards that down payment. So if you take that scenario out, $200 every single month over a course of 2 years is going to be $4,800 that you as the buyer is going to have towards your down payment. Plus, you can also utilize that option price towards the down payment as well. So a lease option is a great tool if you're a buyer that is saving up money to utilize as a down payment or towards closing costs. Now, one interesting thing to keep in mind when we're talking about lease options, let's say that you end up not executing and closing or purchasing that property, you are going to forego that option price plus the money you've negotiated that's going to be put towards that down payment because you're not executing on that option to buy that piece of property. So what strategies are consistent with these two elements when it comes to real estate investing? Well, typically with contract for deeds, there's a strategy that utilizes just that called slow flips. And a slow flip essentially is when a buyer owns a home and he is looking to flip that property over a longer period of time. And here's how a slow flip works. So let's say that somebody owns that home and they find somebody that's willing to buy that home from them. They're working directly with them in a contract for deed scenario versus traditional financing. So the seller is becoming the bank and selling that property to the buyer. Now the seller typically buys this property with private money and he might be paying a little bit higher interest rate, but the overall goal, he's looking for properties that are between $50,000 to $100,000. Once he has this property that he acquires with private money, that he gets at a discount, the seller is then going to sell the property to an individual at a higher price than he purchased it at, but he can charge a higher interest rate. And here's the overall goal with that strategy when it comes to a slow flip. Number one, The seller wants to finance his property with his private money lender as if it were a car, an auto payment, right? So he's looking to have that amortized over a period of, say, maybe 5, 6, or 7 years. So let's say that he purchases a property for $50,000. He wants that $50,000 paid back to his private money lender within 5, 6, or 7 years. Now he's turning around and selling that property to the buyer that he found through a contract for deed, and he's financing over 30 years. But the payment coming from the new buyer to the seller has to be equal to or greater than the payment he's making to the private money lender. So that's called a slow flip. And the overall goal is to make those payments where that property is paid off in 5, 6, or 7 years. However, after 5, 6, or 7 years, that person has cash flow coming in every single month. So he's flipping that property over a very slow, longer period of time. However, the strategy utilized with the lease option is one that I've come up with that originally started with a slow flip. And I thought, with a slow flip, the only thing that I don't like is there's not very much cash flow every single month. So how can I turn this on its head and maybe disrupt this slow flip industry just a little bit to be able to produce cash flow? And it's something I've come up with called cash flow flipping. And instead of using a contract for deed, I utilize a lease option. And a cash flow flip is very similar to a slow flip, right? So same thing, if I'm the seller, first off, I want to find a home. And I've been searching in the Midwest where I'm finding homes between $50,000 to $100,000. And I'm negotiating a very low price, trying to get 25 to 30% below what asking price is, right? So because of that, I might put a ton of offers out there, but might only get 1 or 2 accepted out of, say, maybe 10 offers. But once I have that property under contract, once again, I'm using private money and I'm buying that home outright, which allows me to negotiate, and I'm closing in a much quicker time than traditional financing. So once I have that property, let's say that I bought it for $50,000, is listed at $70,000, and let's say my private money is borrowing money to me at 12%, and I pay interest only on this. So instead of a slow flip, where I'm trying to amortize that loan over 5, 6, or 7 years, I'm only paying interest only on the private money. So let's say it's 12%. 12% on $50,000 is $6,000 a year or $500 a month. Now what I do, I own this property, I'm finding a buyer who wants to buy it from me on a lease option, right? So we agree on them buying that home from me at a certain price at a certain date down the road. So let's say it's 2 years down the road and it's at $72,000. Now this person could have seen that property just listed at $70,000 and think, oh my goodness, if I'm able to purchase this property at $72,000 that I just saw listed at 70, 2 years down the road, that's a good deal. And it would be. And so they give me an option price to be able to buy that from me at that price at a certain date down the road. And let's say that's even just, say, $1,500. So I take the $1,500 and let's say that the rent price, the lease price every single month is $1,000 a month. So remember, I'm paying $500 a month to my private money lender. I'm receiving $1,000 a month in rental price, but I'm counting $100 of their payment towards their down payment, which would give them, over the course of 2 years, $2,400 plus their $1,500 option money. So they have nearly $3,000 they can count towards their down payment at the end of the lease term. So if this scenario plays out, I'm making almost $400 a month in cash flow utilizing this strategy, right? So over the course of 2 years, I'm making almost 10 grand in cash flow off of this property. And if I sell this property at $72,000 and they execute on that option to buy it from me, which most times people want to, or else they lose that option money plus the money they've been counting towards the down payment every single month in their lease payment. And if I sell that at $72,000, I receive $72,000, I take $50,000 and I pay the private money lender and I pocket $22,000, minus some expenses here and there. But you can see how this strategy, utilizing lease options, has been absolutely a game changer for me when it comes to real estate investing. And if you want to understand this strategy of cash flow flipping in greater detail, go to this video right here that I explain it in complete detail exactly how to do this. It's a strategy that works in any market, in any condition, regardless of what the economy is doing, producing awesome cash flow. Thanks for stopping by. Have an amazing day.